All right, there we go. Had to unmute myself. Welcome everybody to the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on drought and hydrologic conditions, November 2024. To be honest, just based on what temperatures have been like as of late, it feels more like September. It has been pretty warm here. I'll just go ahead and tell you guys now, but this time of year we're supposed to be in the upper 50s, low 60s for average highs, and we're about like that today. I'm looking at the current Kentucky Mesnet map right now, and Fayette County's in the upper 50s. Bowling Green down there is in the low 60s, but these highs we've been seeing recently in the 70s, even touching 80 at times. It's been kind of crazy to see. If it doesn't feel like November, you're absolutely correct. Again, just starting off with the general information. This series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at WKU in partnership with NIDIS and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. This delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners, including the Kentucky Mesnet down at WKU, the Kentucky Climate Center, the Division of Water. Our next scheduled webinar is December 5th, same time, first Thursday of the month at 2 p.m., 1 p.m. Central. Now, we are recording this. It is available. If you got some friends, family that want to watch this later, feel free to look at the Kentucky Climate Center on YouTube and access this video. So just starting off, this is a picture from Harlan County when colors were somewhat near a peak on October 18th. They were surprising to me, I guess. We were in drought conditions prior to this, and it seems like past years we have drought conditions. You don't necessarily see all the bright, vivid colors, but it seems like it was kind of opposite this year. You guys can comment in the chat box what you guys were seeing, but that's just kind of my sense around here in Fayette County. And going across Eastern Kentucky and whatnot. But outline, same old, same old. Looking at recent conditions, the impacts on agriculture, hydrological impacts, the outlooks moving forward, quick summary, and a question discussion section. But so looking over here on the left, just want to bring it to everybody's mind that there is a new Kentucky Mesnet station. Congratulations. Shane, what number is this in Greene County? Is this like 81 or something?
Officially 80 for us.
Okay, officially 80. Um, 80 Kentucky Mesnet stations now here in the state of Kentucky. This is a look at their new one in Greene County, 4 miles southeast of Greensburg. And this was on October 18th. They went live. And then something else that happened. It seems like these things are occurring more often than not this year, but we had this solar eclipse earlier. What was that? April, I guess it was. And then we had these northern lights start showing up during the summer months, and lo and behold, we had a comet pass through the area in the middle of October. Looking at this astronomical phenomena, we've seen quite a bit this year. And that was I myself did not get the chance to see this comet, but the Kentucky Mesnet did get a picture of this when it was lower on the horizon there on October 15th in Callaway County. So that's a cool shot. Shane, you guys are going to have to put that in a frame, put it on your wall. All right, moving on to current conditions. Starting off looking at this past week, it's been a pretty wet week and something we haven't seen in quite a while, probably since Hurricane Helene came through the area. But some folks out in Western Kentucky picked up 3+ inches of rainfall. Those totals kind of diminished as you went farther east across Kentucky. You look in central Kentucky there, 1 to 2 inches. You get up to the bluegrass region, most everyone's hovering there around an inch. Then you get out in the eastern Kentucky and totals really drop off closer to 2, 3, 4 tenths of an inch. But state average for this time was an inch, which is 0.27 inches above normal. So everybody look at this map right now. Make a mental picture of it. we're going to go look at 30-day precipitation. It didn't change that much. Again, 7-day precipitation and 30-day precipitation. So not a whole lot of change in the totals, and that's because we had one of our driest Octobers ever recorded in Kentucky history. So this data goes back again the past 30 days. So we're going into that last week of October, the end of that last week of October, but most of the rainfall on this map came from what we've seen this week. There was a round of rainfall on Halloween. Didn't produce too much in the way of rainfall, so the brunt of these totals have occurred in the past, 2 or 3 days. State average over this 30-day time period is 1.12, over 2 inches below normal. Again, if I go back to the 7-day rainfall, the average is 1.06. So we only added 6/100ths of an inch on average based on these Kentucky Mesonet totals and ASOS stations going back 30 days. That says something as to how dry we've been. I wanted to add this in here. I think Shane put this on the Kentucky Mesonet Twitter page, but this was made on October 28th. And this shows the consecutive days with less than 1/10 of an inch of rainfall. And you look out across the state, there's numerous locations that were in that 28, 29 day range there. So 28 days without more than 1/10 of an inch of rainfall, 29 days without 1/10 of an inch of rainfall. It was a dry October, and that was an understatement, I should say. Going back 60 days, we start taking into account that rainfall we saw from Hurricane Helene. So we really see those totals jump up. Again, going back to 30 days, the average was 1.12 inches. We go to 60 days, that average jumps all the way up to 6.69 inches. So we basically added over 5 inches to the average, just going from the 30-day precipitation map to the 60-day precipitation map. We see those totals across Western Kentucky. Fulton County over there, 11.77 inches. Graves County, 11.1 inches. Move up into Central Kentucky, you start seeing those totals diminish, but still a lot more than what we saw in October this year. And the brunt of this all came from Hurricane Helene, because if you remember, before Hurricane Helene, we were in drought conditions. So Hurricane Helene was much welcome. Going back 90 days, again, you don't see that state average move very much. 8.52 inches, an increase about 2 inches. Again, we were in that drought, so it was fairly dry. Going back 90 days, state average was 8.52 inches, which is about 2 inches below normal. So looking at departure from normal precipitation, first map in the upper left-hand corner, 30-day departure from normal. Most of the state is running anywhere from 1 to 3 inches below normal. The most negative deviations are across the eastern Kentucky up into the Bluegrass and down there into the Cumberland region. And those totals get a little better as you go out farther west. But again, that's mainly from all this precipitation we've seen the past couple days, especially across Western Kentucky, some of those regions seeing 3+ inches. We go to 60-day departure from normal rainfall in the upper right-hand corner. We start seeing the impacts of Hurricane Helene in the region. All those dark green shades across Western Kentucky, 2 to 4 inches above normal. Some we're seeing some of those blue shades, which is 4 to 6 inches above normal. Then we go down to 90-day. We start seeing those below normal deviations start showing up more so on the map. Again, we were dry before Hurricane Helene made its way through the region. So just some statistics I pulled out from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center ahead of this webinar. First off, Kentucky averaged 0.23 inches of rainfall in October. So a couple tenths of an inch of rainfall, not much at all. And that's closing in on 3 inches below normal for the month. Now, 0.23 inches is not much at all. Prior to Halloween, I was looking at our data from the UK Ag Weather Center, and the average state rainfall was just at 1/10 of an inch. So if we wouldn't have gotten that rainfall on Halloween, we would have been right there in the territory of the driest October ever recorded in Kentucky history. And that day goes all the way back to 1895. We're talking about a 130-year record. Just looking at these stats down here. The all-time driest October ever recorded in Kentucky was 1963. State average 0.14 inches. Again, if we didn't get Halloween rainfall, we may have broken this. Second place is 0.26 in 1924, and third place sits at about a half inch in 1938. You take all this into account and you look at that average there in the first bull is 0.23 inches. I think we're safe to say this is going to be a top 3 driest October ever recorded in Kentucky history. Now, looking at temperatures, look at how warm it's been in Kentucky this past month. Average temperature for the month of October was 60.2 degrees, 3.2 degrees above normal. Now, a lot of that was pushed over the second half of the month when we had highs getting into the 70s and 80s, again, well above normal, what we should be seeing for late October or even the middle of October, whenever we should be in the 60s. This will likely rank somewhere in the top 30 warmest Octobers of all time. And I pulled out some data again, looking at Kentucky's top 10 warmest years on record. 5 of the top 10 warmest years on record have occurred since 2012 in the Bluegrass State. Again, this data goes all the way back to 1895. 5 of the top 10 warmest years on record have occurred since 2012. Now, looking at the data for 2024, every month in 2024 has ran above normal in the way of temperatures. Currently speaking, October official data has not came out yet, but we did run above normal. If we're just looking at the data from January to September, that would be the third warmest January September we've ever seen in Kentucky history. So considering we just saw a very warm October, we're going to look at the outlooks here in a second, which is showing we're probably going to stay warm through November. Take all that into account. We're going to be going into December. If December stays status quo, which it would have to be significantly cool, we're probably looking at another top 10 warmest year on record to add to this list, which would be number 6 since 2012. So, I've talked about a lot. This past decade or so has been exceptionally warm when we're looking at Kentucky's climate going back to the late 1800s, and it just continues to stay that way. So, all right, looking at soil moistures and stream flows. Top left picture. I believe Shane may have sent this out in another Twitter post, or I should say X post. I'm sorry. Recently, this was going into the last week of October, ahead of all this rain we got on Halloween and even this week. And October is generally cooler, so we're not going to see soil moisture deplete at a rate that we would typically see in like the months of July or August or even September. So less daylight, cooler temperatures, not as much evapotranspiration. So again, we're not going to see that shallow soil moisture really diminish as quickly as we would 2 months ago. But you can still see that soil moisture, especially at the 2-inch level and 4-inch level, going in the wrong direction. And ever so slightly, but it is. So you go 4 or 5 straight weeks with below normal rainfall, even with as cool as it's been, you're still going to see those decreases in soil moisture. And that's being reflected in the latest USDA crop progress and condition report in Kentucky. The top right chart right there, looking across the state, topsoil moisture is rated 16% very short and 45% short. That's a very large chunk of the state. Subsoil moisture, 17% very short and 42% short. So this rain we're getting this week is very, very much welcome for Kentucky agriculture, and puts us, I guess, on track to go in the right direction moving forward. So Looking at stream flows, considering all this rain we've had this past couple days, they're looking better across the state. I was seeing more of those orange colors on there for below normal stream flows, but compared to where we should be at this time of year, starting to see a lot of normal, those green colors on there, and even some much above normal or high stream flows across Western Kentucky. Some of those areas that saw those 3+ inch rainfall totals here recently. Now, look at these two maps over on the right. Um, Going back, I guess I should have put this and yeah, I did. Um, Looking at soil moisture percentile, this was taken October 31st ahead of all that rain we got on Halloween. And there was some concern, with wheat going in the ground, whatnot, germination. Soils were getting pretty dry. But if I fast forward this to what it is today, November 7th, we're looking a lot better across the state. In fact, we're looking a lot better across most of the Midwest. So you see all that red color, below normal soil moisture as of October 31st, and it's essentially wiped out going into the end of the last week of November. Looking at that soil moisture anomaly change, again, you can really see that change down there in the last graph, um, showing all those darker shades of green. There was significant rainfall that fell across portions of Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, you name it. So, taking all this information into account, let's look at the U.S. Drought Monitor. Again, we were getting dry in early fall, and we had, let's see, 66%, 67% of the state was classified in moderate drought, severe drought, or extreme drought. Almost 94% of the state was classified in abnormally dry conditions, moderate drought, severe drought, or extreme drought. And then what happened? Hurricane Helene moved through the area. And I know Chip's on here. He was glad to see it. We saw some significant rainfall, and he was able to take a lot of color off this map. So this was a new map on October 1st, released on October 3rd, and say goodbye to most drought conditions across the state. We just had a slight blip over there in northeastern Kentucky. Otherwise, there was just some areas left over that were abnormally dry. I think we got to some point, I'd have to look back at it, where most of the state was actually drought free, abnormally dry free. And then we went through October, dry, 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 4 or 5 straight weeks worth of dry conditions, below normal rainfall. And this is the latest map as of today, released this morning. And most of the state, absent some one county up there in northeastern Kentucky, is classified as abnormally dry. And we do have a couple areas there in south central Kentucky that are under a moderate drought. So this precipitation we're seeing the past couple days will definitely help. And we'll look at the forecast, which will help even further. Excuse me. Um, Looking at the Midwest as a whole, again, you can see Kentucky there all in yellow. We're in abnormally dry conditions. We're actually in better shape than a lot of the folks across the Midwest region. If I change this to how this map has changed over the past 8 weeks, even though we brought abnormally dry conditions back into play the past couple of weeks here in Kentucky, looking the past 2 months, we've really made progress in the right condition. Some places seeing a class 2 or class 3 improvement on the U.S. Drought Monitor, but a lot of places aren't the same way. Looking up there in the upper Midwest, Michigan, you name it. So we're looking better compared to some other folks across the Midwest. Looking at agricultural impacts. Corn harvested about complete, 92% as of this week, slightly ahead of the 5-year average. Soybeans are the same way, 75% this week. What is that? 7% ahead of the 5-year average. We have winter wheat going into the ground. 62% is in the ground this week. 41% has emerged. So, this moisture is much welcome. Maybe too much in some aspects. I haven't heard any issues the past couple days across Western Kentucky, but that might be something to look at. Crop conditions, winter wheat, very small amount in the very poor to poor category. We love to see it. Pasture conditions, definitely more so there. Just we had a dry October. Hopefully this rain takes care of issues. I will say, and I might have mentioned this in the last webinar, after Hurricane Helene moved through, seemed like the grass bounced back pretty quick. Like, so hopefully if we get this rain on the ground the past couple days and won't be an issue moving forward. Lastly, a couple more things I want to talk about. I did have some questions about this past month. So whenever we talk about the National Weather Service issuing freeze warnings and frost advisories, that's all based on agriculture susceptibility. So I'm on the phone talking with Extension agents across the state. I'm talking with the National Weather Service to determine when we no longer need those headlines. When do we no longer need to issue freeze warnings, frost advisories across the state? Now, if we look over to the right, our average date of seeing our first killing freeze of the year, which is when we typically aren't issuing frost advisories or freeze warnings anymore, is somewhere in late October and going into November. Now, we had a freeze event back in the middle of October. It wasn't a hard freeze for most of the state, if not all the state. Most folks just hovered right around freezing, did see some frosty conditions out there, but we didn't see a hard freeze by any means. And but we got together and talked about it. I made some calls to county agents and whatnot. And even though there were some counties that may not have necessarily got down below freezing on this night, the fact of the matter is there's just an overall lack of sensitive vegetation at this time of year. And my thought process was, you know, whenever we issue these headlines, I want people to react. And if there's nothing really to react to, do we really need to be issuing these frost advisories and freeze warnings? So the decision was made to just shut it down for fall of 2024, and we'll start issuing headlines again in spring 2025 when agriculture becomes susceptible then. Bottom line is it was an awfully warm October. This was probably the coolest cold air event we got. Again, some folks dipped down to below freezing, some folks didn't. But considering the forecast October too, we're in the 70s and 80s for a good chunk of time. They're just it may not make sense to completely cancel headlines, but just for the fact of the matter that there's not a whole lot of sensitive vegetation left, we decided to close it up. Lastly, going through October, the Mississippi River was going in the wrong direction again, but pulled this up this morning considering all this rainfall that area has seen this past week. The Lower Mississippi River Forecast Center released this on social media. They've seen significant increases in the flows out of the upper Mississippi and Missouri rivers this week with Cairo now, I always get that name wrong. I apologize. Now cresting around 24.8 later this week. With the official forecast using 48-hour forecast rainfall, we are not seeing a return of the low stages in November. So that's exactly what we want to see moving forward. Looking at 7-day forecast precipitation, it looks like this active pattern is going to continue. This is valid from 7 p.m. this evening through 7 p.m. next Thursday evening. And looking at 1 inch or so across eastern Kentucky, increasing to 1.5 to 2 inches across western Kentucky and much of central Kentucky. Going out a little further, 6 to 10-day temperature outlook, November 12th through the 16th. If you think it was going to get cooler anytime soon, you're going to have to wait a little longer. So these bright shades of red suggest very high confidence from the forecasters that above normal temperature is going to stick around. Again, just put in perspective, normal temperatures for this time of year in the upper 50s, low 60s. So you're probably going to see numerous days in the 60s, 70s moving forward. I'm personally not going to complain much. 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. Looks like this active pattern we've seen this week is going to stick around and even into the later stages of next work week. Moving on to 8 to 14 day temperature precipitation outlooks. Not a whole lot of change. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Bottom line, it's been warm. It's likely going to stay warm over the next couple weeks. And we've gotten a little wetter this week. It looks like it's going to stay that way the next couple weeks. Monthly temperature outlook, precipitation outlook goes to show what we're seeing the next couple weeks, kind of hinting at that pattern sticking around. I guess if it were me, I didn't read the monthly narrative, but I guess if I can pull it up real quick, I'll let you guys know. Looking at long range outlooks. So the 3 to 4 week precipitation outlook that goes out from November 16th to 29th, it's leaning toward equal chances for below normal or near normal or above normal rainfall. So that's probably why we're not necessarily completely leaning above in these monthly precipitation outlooks. So there's a little bit less confidence as we go into the latter half of November as to which direction we're going to go. Seasonal temperature outlook for the next 3 months, November through January, is starting to get into that winter season, calling for above normal temperatures. This isn't quite the surprise considering a La Nina in place, but also if you look back at the past decade, our winters have ran extremely warm here in Kentucky. And then the seasonal precipitation outlook kind of takes the form of this La Nina we'll talk about right now. So La Nina is part of the El Nino Southern Oscillation. So we're basically looking at equatorial sea surface temperatures over in the Pacific Ocean. And when those are cooler, we go into a La Nina. When they are warmer, we're in a El Nino. And based on those cooler sea surface temperatures this year, we are in what you call a weak La Nina. Now, this ultimately affects our average storm track in the United States and across the world. And it typically means we see wetter conditions during the winter months here in Kentucky. Saying that, that's more so the case with a strong La Nina. So we have a much better idea of what to expect over the winter months when we have a strong La Nina or a strong El Nino in place. In this case, we have a weak La Nina. So the confidence isn't necessarily there of what exactly we're going to see during the winter months. I know you're probably saying, man, that's a typical meteorologist answer, but it's the truth. But this is a look. This comes from the National Weather Service. I just showed you the 3 month seasonal outlook for November through January. This is a look at the winter outlook for December through February. And this is basically what a La Nina typically brings the United States, warmer than normal temperatures across the southern half of the U.S., cooler than normal up there in the American Northwest, North Central, above normal precipitation, the Great Lakes region below normal across the southern half of the United States. But again, this is a weak La Nina, so no guarantees. We're still going to see short-term impacts throughout the winter months. Just because you look at the seasonal temperature outlook and it's hitting at above normal temperatures, that doesn't mean we're not going to go the next 3 months without some cold spells here and there. So we're definitely going to see that roller coaster pattern at times. But overall, when we get to the end of February 2025, NOAA predicts its temperatures are going to run above normal and for the winter months, and equal chances for precipitation. It could really go either way. Look at the monthly stream flow outlook. Won't spend too much time on this slide. We're looking fine with all this rainfall we're getting this week, next week, and the outlook's hinting this will continue in that 2 week time frame. Looking at the U.S. seasonal drought outlook, going out to all the way to the end of January 2025. We're blank on this map. It looks like drought development is likely across the southern half of the United States. Again, that kind of adds up with that winter outlook, drier conditions in that neck of the United States. A little drier up to our northwest into the Dakotas, Minnesota, but drought removal likely or remaining up there in Indiana, Ohio as we progress into early winter 2025. Looking at wildland fire potential, we do have some red shade in Kentucky and up through the Appalachians. I did look into the narrative for this, and the reason being this was kind of the track Hurricane Helene took. And there's a lot of down trees, especially on those southeast facing ridges and the mountain gaps. So there is some worry there. There's going to be some fuels and people that are potentially burning some of this debris that it may spread. So they want folks to be extremely careful as we navigate this next month and into December. So just in summary, Hurricane Helene moved through, then we got very dry this past month, looking like a top 3 driest October ever recorded. Luckily, we're seeing rainfall again this week and the next 2 weeks. Temperatures have run above normal for every month in 2024. It looks like we're going to add another top 10 warmest year ever recorded in Kentucky. Growing season 2024 is essentially done. Sure, we got some pasture growth still ongoing out there, but looking at crops, yeah, basically done for the year. No more frost freeze headlines until spring 2025. November looks to remain warm, so I can't tell you when our next cold spell is going to be. Some wetter conditions over the next couple of weeks, but what the winter outlook suggests it could really be a toss up for 2024, 2025. And with that, our next scheduled webinar is again the first Thursday of December, December 5th, same time. Not sure if Jerry or Chip is going to lead this one. There were some scheduling conflicts, so I went back to back this year or the past couple months. But with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. So feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll take a look at the chat box real quick and or unmute yourself and shout it out. So let's
Hey
see.
Matt, did you see where they issued a secretarial disaster declaration for 30 Kentucky counties?
I did that. Or I did see that. I didn't do that. I'm sorry, Chelsea.
It's okay.
But that was mainly drought, right?
Yes, that was all based
Yeah.
off the drought.
Yeah, yeah. Chip, do you want to comment on that at all?
I mean, it was just issued by the Secretary of Agriculture, and it's for, I believe, for low interest loans for farmers.
Okay. Was that ultimately triggered by the U.S. drought monitor, I assume?
I believe that it's not like the forage payments where it's automatically triggered.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they look at that and other reports coming in through the USDA.
Gotcha. Thank you. So Chip said not only top 3 driest October on record, but top 3 or 4 driest overall month. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. That says something. Whew. Shane says October was 5th driest all time for Louisville and Lexington, 6th driest October for Bowling Green. 4th for, okay, Lexington, Frankfurt, driest October for Jackson. Wow. It was something I was telling all my coworkers around here. It as dry as October was, it didn't necessarily feel like it. Just we had all that rainfall from Hurricane Helene. the grass really went in the right direction, greening up, and it was holding that soil moisture just because it was relatively cool compared to those summer months. Not as much ET. So we didn't necessarily feel the impacts in my mind of how dry October actually was at the end of the day. So
Yeah, Matt, just checking on burn bans, and I think Steve Cole from the Division of Forestry is still on the call and may be able to confirm this, but right now their website shows Greene as well as Marion counties in the central part of the state with countywide burn bans, Johnson County in the east, and then in the west, Todd County with a burn ban.
so what was that? 5 total?
Four,
4.
at least for
Sorry.
last check of their website.
Gotcha. I mean, it is that time of year. This is our driest season, and October was really that way. If we wouldn't have gotten Hurricane Helene, we would have been in a world of hurt. I can only imagine. So
Yeah, without a doubt, Southeast Kentucky still hasn't got any of this moisture, so we're still fighting down there. Last week we've had right around about 100 fires, burning close to 3,000 acres, and conditions are such that the burning conditions are starting to get a little worse. This moisture is helping them, obviously, but we need it everywhere.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully the forecast and those outlooks verify for you all in Eastern Kentucky. Um, yeah, Western Kentucky's definitely got the rainfall with this go around, but need to move east.
Yeah, well, a lot of people in the woods this weekend with deer season opening up, so it'll be interesting.
That's true also. Oof. Anybody else? All right, Shane, what do you think? See everybody on December 5th?
Sounds good to me, Matt.
All right. Everybody have a good one. And I know we're 3 weeks early, but I won't see you before then. Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. So we'll see you on December 5th. See you.
Thank you, Matt. See you.